Your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Hello and a pleasant good morning. Today is Monday, May 27th, and it's a little after 11 o'clock in the morning. Once again, this is C.A. Nuri, and I shall be your host for today. Today, we'll talk about medical marijuana and its impact on the Bahamas Pharmaceutical Association. Today, we have Dr. Marvin Smith, who is the president of the Bahamas Pharmaceutical Association.
Yeah.
Correct? And I want to start my questioning because we're continuing the conversation from the other hour with On the Clock with Aaron Green. I want to start the conversation about the Cannabis Authority. The Cannabis Authority would be made up of 9 representatives from government, medical and pharmaceutical professions, agricultural, business and finance sectors, academia, and the faith-based and civil society communities. And I wanted to know from your aspect or from your association, how will the Cannabis Authority impact you? Or what is your opinion of it?
Well, let's think about this. The government has said that pharmacy as a profession is so important that it must have a stable seat on the Cannabis Authority. That's their draft. Mm-hmm. But the dispensing of it can be done without pharmacists? The two don't match. All right? So for us, listen, I think that the Cannabis Authority, as it's set up, is a good structure. Is it perfect? Probably not. There's always going to be somebody left out, somebody left in, but I think it's a good structure. And I think if we're looking at how we involve more and more sectors of that, I think that's critical. But at the end of the day, what I'm hoping is that the Cannabis Authority will have a mindset of empowering Bahamian industry, Bahamian research, Bahamian practice, Bahamian agriculture, and with a mindset that we can now take this and export this to the world, right? We always look at what America wants, but America growing enough cannabis for themselves, all right? But there's other places that we could export to do some things. So all of this is going to be critical. But again, this is where there's this dichotomy, this disconnect between what you think the role of the pharmacist should be in this act and then what you're actually putting out in terms of the mechanism for the most important thing that impacts Bahamian people, which is access to the product.
You talk about roles. What makes the pharmacist superior to the proposed dispensary? Why you think your organization is better suited to be dispensing medical marijuana?
It's not what I think. It's what every major industrial country in the world does. Every sensible, sane country in the world has a mechanism for how patients access medicines. They go to a physician, all right? The physician diagnoses, figures out the treatment plan, creates a treatment plan. That treatment plan is then put on a prescription and it is sent to a pharmacist who now looks at that plan, not just in terms of the plan by itself, but because that patient is coming to that particular pharmacy, they're looking at everything else that patient is on. All right? Their drug, their medication history, their current other medications they're on, how this patient is compliant on medication, all of these things. And then they sit back and they say, this is good, or they go to the physician and they say, we think you need to change this, let's talk about this. That's how patients are managed.
That's why the pharmacies tell me, oh, it needs to, you need an hour, it'll be an hour, because they have to actually
they got to check every
make
day.
an assessment and then determine, oh, I actually should call this doctor and ask some more questions before I dispense this.
Dr. Rose said it best on Dwight show last week, right? She said that when physicians write, pharmacists are their last line of defense. All right? They're the last line of defense. I always tell my pharmacists this: when we make mistakes, people die.
Is there a national database for prescriptions?
No.
Does that need to be a part of this regime?
It does, and what we're also asking the government to do is the same system that they're going to set up for the electronic record and prescriptions for cannabis as a controlled substance to set it up for all controlled substances. Again, why are we making specific rules for one product when you're putting it in a control system where every other product is the same?
The Prime Minister mentioned that we're not ready yet, right? In regard to producing medical marijuana here locally, and you mentioned empowering Bahamians, right, earlier. Do we have any facilities that can produce weed that could make it, what I'm trying to say, make it palatable to sick patients currently?
So let me clarify that. I think the Prime Minister's response was in response to the question of recreational use when he said we're not ready yet. I will put it to you that if given the opportunity, I think we do have people on the ground who can appropriately and with some level of profit grow, produce, and refine cannabis in this country.
And what would they need to do that?
I mean,
Or let's say this: the law is passed tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's enforced Monday of next week. Say it's enforced the 1st of June.
yeah.
What's the timeline between full enforcement and the first prescription being filled?
Or we have to import?
Right? In terms of ensuring that the infrastructure is in place, quality control protocols have been set up, testing capacity is available to ensure that the product is what you say it is. So from the bud to the pharmaceutical grade product, surely we would have a system. I mean, I know that the pharmaceutical sector has created networks where they guarantee they're getting good, safe drugs and not getting counterfeit. But from June 1st to the first a prescription being filled, what's the timeline?
Okay, so there's two scenarios on that, Aaron. One is that we take the government at its word, and it says that no licenses have been issued. They ain't really talking to nobody else. This is just simply the structure they're setting up, and when on day one, everybody starts from the same place. If that's the case, you're looking at about 8 to 12 months, in my estimation, because you have to set up labs, you have to set up quality assurance. None of these things are laid out in the actual act, and the minister says that they will be put in through regulations and some other things. You have to set up and train inspectors, and not just inspectors for the dispensing part of it, but inspectors because it's for the growing part of it, inspectors for the manufacturing part of it, inspectors for the packaging. All of these are different aspects, okay? Now, if for some reason there's some people in the background who already got quote-unquote their licenses in their pocket and they're just waiting to say go, and we saw this happen in 1992 when they repealed the Immovable Properties Act, and 2 days later, Sotheby's was set up here. So how did they know, right? So if people are getting that kind of head start, if foreigners are getting that kind of head start, right, they could be up and running in 3 months because they're bringing in their stuff with them, and it will put Bahamians perpetually behind the 8 ball.
So that would probably involve importation of pharmaceutical grade.
I think no matter how you do it, you're looking at important. At the end of the day, the issue is that there's all these different types of medical cannabis in different forms and dosage forms and formulations, right? People are going to make, from our end, I'm hoping the Bahamians who get involved in the industry will make what's profitable. And what may be profitable to them may not be some of the other forms, but some of those other forms are needed for healthcare. And so you'll always have this aspect of importation, right? People talk about the demand, or the demand is going to be high. I don't think the demand is going to be high. I'll tell you why. Because I think a part of it, people say, oh, it's just the money you are looking out for, right? And here's the thing. There is money involved in this. I'd be lying if I said there's not a money concern. But that's not the main concern. The main concern is you have to make sure that when somebody comes in to get a medicine, that they're properly managed. They're patients. They're not customers. They're patients. But let me go back to this demand thing, all right? I grew up in the hood, okay? I know San Souci life would keep do it. You know who's going to make the most money when this thing goes down?
Grammy selling backwards?
Listen, man, Pookie on the corner. all right? But you're in the corner can make the money, all right? All right? So, because at the end of the day, you ain't gonna never be able to compete with his price. And the people who want to smoke weed will smoke weed. And they smoking weed.
Callers, I saw you, so you can call back at 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259. We have any text there, Aaron, so we can read them into the records?
Yeah, man, absolutely. And then I want to go to costs, visitors, and in terms of costs, it's accessible isn't just, is it available, it's can you afford it? I see phone line.
Yeah, let's squeeze this caller in, because I know they've been on hold for a while. Go ahead, caller. Caller, can you hear us? Caller going once. Caller going twice.
Do me a favor, caller, call back.
Okay, so let's read the text in the meantime.
Here's a text. Good morning. Can you please ask Dr. Smith if persons with heart conditions can use medical cannabis? And so let's go right there. Are there any conditions, diseases that absolutely cannabis is a problem for? You just know that cannabis is not going to be a part of your therapeutic.
Well, it depends on the form of cannabis. It really depends on the form of how cannabis is. So, for example, if I'm also suffering from emphysema or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, smoking is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
The teas might not be a problem. You see what I'm saying? So it's all, and this is why it's critical that pharmacists are involved in this process, because these are the things in terms of drug interactions and contraindications, which contraindications means you can't take this. Interactions means that this interacts with another product you're doing, and sometimes that means you can take it. Sometimes that means we have to adjust when you take it or how much you take, all these different things. That's what we go to school for. That's what we know. Somebody who you just pull up off the street and get them a 3-month course to tell them the difference between this bud and that bud and that bud cannot manage patients. And that's why I say the way I'm looking at this bill, this is drafted for the gross people.
Dr. Smith, we have all kind of phone calls. I mean, every line lit.
So when I say visitors, that's the same conversation we want to get back to after these calls.
Let's quickly run through all these calls so they get pose their questions. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doc, and good morning, Aaron Green.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, Doc. Hello, Doc.
I'm here.
You know what's so ironic spinning around in my head this morning listening to you? I mean, like, I said they will have a naturopathic on the radio speaking for natural medicine use. Asked an allopathic doctor who basically marijuana was something that you all don't know nothing about, never. You have a person want to get involved with it. You ain't got no qualifications for marijuana. You know, I mean, like, people who in the field, who've been dealing with it, whatever, they have a better understanding than you. So, I mean, you have understanding of pharmaceutical medicine and allopathic medicine and natural medicine, two different things all together. You have to do a course and everything to up yourself to understand what's really going on. But, you know, it was ironic too, right? For the sake of allopathic medicine, right, and doctors and hospital pharmacies, right? I mean, like, how proud a doctor would be to know that you got patients on your medicine for 50, 80 years and on multiple medicines, and when it reached the point that you say we can't do nothing, and you just drop them, right? Even give them a chance to change their diet or to deal with natural medicine. But I see a naturopathic like a Dr. King or somebody who's been dealing with natural medicine and really pushing for or to say for natural medicine to be the medicine for the people in this country.
Okay, let me let Dr. Smith respond to that, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So let me first say that Dr. King is one of my good friends, and I know that he has a wealth of knowledge on this. All right, he would be one of the persons, if I brought people to the table, somebody like him with those qualifications would be at the table. All right, but I don't get to decide who comes to the table. I mean, I'm not even at the table as the president of the association, so I certainly can't invite nobody. As it relates to naturopathic medicines, one of the things that we have done since 2010 in the association, we have been the primary continuing education provider for pharmacists in this country. 90% of pharmacy education in this country, continuing education, comes through the association. And we have always incorporated in our curriculum natural medicines. We have brought natural we've brought naturopathic doctors to speak with us and do stuff. People you know like Elvira Higgs and Ida Mihana and Dr. King, they've spoken with us. All right, we provide the training. We've provided access to different courses and research. I will put it to you though that your understanding of what pharmacy curriculum is probably back in the 80s. All right. I started pharmacy school in 1995. All right. I studied under one of the more senior at that time researchers in medical cannabis. In fact, he had spent 20 years before he came to Mercer at the University of Mississippi, which at that time had only one of two federal cannabis plantations in America. All right. We've done the training. All right. Not just that. 2 years ago, right after COVID had jumped, I went to Jamaica and sat with our Rastafarian brothers and sisters in the Blue Mountains and had studied with them for a couple of days in terms of what they were doing and those sort of things. No one's going to know everything, and that's why you bring everybody to the table.
Absolutely. Let's go to the phone line, and then we talk about why y'all don't have a journal, why the Pharmaceutical Association hasn't encouraged or facilitated its other counterparts in this conversation in producing and publishing a quarterly or even yearly, once a year journal with these conversations.
We actually do. I'm glad you talked about that.
Good stuff. We're going to get to that. Good morning, caller.
Good morning to all of you in the studios, Seattle and Johnson. Just some quick input where the doctor spoke about data. The Bahamas is, I would say, almost impossible for the Bahamas to become data compliant across the various different regions. It requires a creation of and modification of at least 30 different laws in the Bahamas. We are like, you know how people say China and Japan, the rest of them are in the future? They're not. They're in the present. Just it's where we are. So when you start looking for changing of data exchange, I can tell you unequivocally, this law, any Bahamian, or even a select Bahamian who believe this law is written for them, is delusional at best. Because you're not talking now, and being the age of AI and data exchange, data is one of the most valuable currency there is, an exchange of data. But when you start talking about the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids, and you ask the typical person talking about this, the extraction and the value of these various different things that's now even artificial intelligence is giving information unseen of. Just insert this. Artificial intelligence itself is creating more data than humans have created for all the history of time, because it's beginning to show the seen and unseen and the interactions that never ever multiple databases have shared across each other. So now you're talking about supposed to be growing medical cannabis in the Bahamas. When you start looking, I think it's like 500 different compounds, like 100 cannabinoids and everything. I'm going to go through the whole class. But then you start talking about the variations of different strains that's possible in the Bahamas, where you have the THC dominant, the CBC dominant, the bottled THC dominant. You're now talking about a potential multi-billion-dollar industry. We don't have the scale. They're not coming off any ship. This is an export bill. This is a data collection bill, unseen we've ever experienced, where we talk about creating new data, new profile, new everything where the value is coming from. Because even as you move between different islands, you end up with a different strain of cannabis. This is not for us. I don't care what they say. It's for export, because you're not going to get the 9 million tourists, 90% come from the U.S. and Canada, have their own laws and use and everything else. You could go to jail just for buying a marijuana here and taking it on the ship, because you're going into other different jurisdictions as that marijuana is on that ship. And you talk about now about a grand exchange between all of these multiplicity of countries. This is not for us.
Thank you.
The pharmacists can make an argument, because what the government isn't saying to them is, well, technically, it's only going to be about 20 Bahamians who will be able to eligible to use it. So you all really don't count. And this is just a illusionary benefits, like what you say, duty-free for Rolls-Royce.
Thank you, C. Allen. One thing I noticed that when Prime Minister Minnis began talking about, when he began sending out the little whispers that people would be able to smoke, they hinted, they allowed us to infer from their suggestions that recreational cannabis may actually be on the table. From as early as that, there was always talk of an export bill. Now, I note that once drafts and bills were circulated for consultation, there was no export license included in I think in those drafts. But I note that when I first began talking about this, there were 5 bills that were being discussed, and one of them is an export bill. In recent conversation or contributions from the minister responsible, the Minister of Health, there was reference to, I think, protocols and standards to guide exportation, but there's no specific exportation license now being offered as a part of this conversation. Who is this bill for? Now, I know I asked the question, but I want to keep talking just for a second. I have noted on the show in the same conversation that the legislation that exists right now permits one to cultivate Indian hemp cannabis with permission, with authorization from specific ministers. The law as it exists right now allows for consumption of cannabis, medicinal cannabis products, or cannabis for medicinal purposes.
Yes.
With authorization from the relevant and specific ministers. So knowing that the legislation that exists right now while we're talking permits an individual or allows an individual to petition.
Yes.
It allows you to petition for authorization to do these things. What exactly is this legislation about? What is this initiative about? Well, the language varies from day to day, but essentially I believe that this legislation is about creating an industry.
And I have no issue with that. I think you're correct on that, and I'm encouraged. And I think when we reviewed as an organization, we were encouraged that in that there were some caveats put that certain industries would have to be fully Bahamian, and other industries have to have a certain amount of Bahamian ownership. Now, that gets into the topic about what is fully Bahamian or what ain't, because, you know, dudes just come here tomorrow and they citizens the next day. And, you know, if the FTX fiasco showed us anything, it is that, you know, foreigners sometimes have more influence in our country than us. But
Rights, influence, and access,
well,
they all spell the same.
they all spell the same, right? The critical thing here is this. All of that other stuff, as a voting citizen, that's what I have to be concerned about. But as an association, what our concerns are is with the healthcare part of this bill.
Okay.
Okay? Here's the issue. If you want to be involved in cannabis dispensing in this country, there's an easy solution for this. All right? There's an easy solution for this. Own a pharmacy. Any Bahamian can own a pharmacy. You don't have to be a pharmacist to own a pharmacy. You just have to hire a pharmacist. Because you can't have a pharmacy without a pharmacist. Okay? We have owners that aren't pharmacists, but they're owners. All right? So no one's trying to keep anybody out of this. If you have the money to open up a dispensary, you have the money to open up a pharmacy.
I'm trying to keep somebody out of it. I can be honest with you.
Right, but the foreigners, see, here's the issue you have to look at. Pharmacy is one of the protected industries in the country. Non-Bahamians cannot own a pharmacy. But under this law, the cannabis dispensaries don't come under a pharmacy. They don't come under the pharmacy council. They come under a completely different council, and then this authority, which means a foreigner is going to be allowed to do this. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about who is this written for, all right? It's certainly not written for the patient, because it puts the patient at a serious risk when they walk into one of these dispensaries. Okay?
We have another caller here, but I want to know this. There is a Pharmacy Act now.
Yes.
And this act is going to be amended.
Yeah.
What is the amendment and how does it impact you?
This is how crazy this is. The Pharmacy Act is being amended to include cannabis dispensary under the definition of a pharmacy, but they don't want the cannabis dispensaries to operate without a pharmacist. Now, you tell me how that makes sense to you.
Interesting.
I,
Go ahead.
after the call, I still want to get back to visitors.
Yeah.
Okay.
And who the bill is being written for. Yeah.
Go ahead, caller. You're on Guy Radio.
Good morning, CA.
Good morning.
And good morning, Aaron, and good morning to your panel.
Morning.
Yeah, I have a comment, but before I say the comment, the gentleman voice sounds familiar from our next show. Is this the biggest Kansas City Chief fans in the universe?
You got it.
I know the way
Two-time
sounds
world
familiar.
champion
All right.
back to back.
Yeah, okay, all right. Call it on Friday so we can talk, but our hand come back to y'all. Our hand come back to the team. But yeah, what I'm going to say is, yeah, I heard you. You like what the black market play in all of this? When the black market, because when this pass and all of it, like the black market getting out of business, and I agree with you, like 2D on the end of the corner, because the 160,000 smokers in the Bahamas, when they want to read, they go, like, more like downtown to this suspension and everything. But I walk with my dog and go right up the road to the bird, up the road and get what I got to get. I agree with you, got to say this more for tourists. I'm trying to say that this ain't to stop the black market. All this could cause is a reef between the black market and the pharmacy. But the locals, the fellas get the regular spot man. So in order to be a black market, it could be that.
And this is the thing I keep saying to folk who think that we're trying to stop them from being able to smoke. We don't. The association has no position on that. Do what you want. You're a citizen. You take the risk you want to take. At the end of the day, though, what's critical for us is we don't want for patients to have to go to the black market to get their stuff.
Exactly, that'll be like, yeah, like that patient would not do it. But yeah,
and I go back to what I said
be a black
earlier.
market. And the regular smokers, the 150,000 smokers, man, who I know, like who's smoking from the 80s, 80, 85 years, 40 years, 40, 50, 60. Man, they ain't jumping in the car. Man, just read like a candy. Like how you can find a mint. You can find weed nowadays, man. So, you see 150 pounds just coming from foreign with all them guns Saturday. It'll always be smuggling. It'll be foreign, Jamaican weed, Cuban weed, all that weed will be in this country, man. And then you can't stop the black market. That's what I wanted to say. All right.
Yeah. But the thing is,
Thank you very much, Carl.
yeah, the thing is, again, this dichotomy where you've taken this new cannabis dispensary and you've put it in the Pharmacy Act to say it's a pharmacy, but it don't need a pharmacist.
Right.
You know, my little niece, who in 6th grade, is saying, make it make sense.
Teacher, make it make sense.
Make it make
Name
sense.
me. It's you.
Because that don't make sense.
Absolutely. Now, another concern that I have in terms of visitors, I understand this particular aspect that are we creating an income generating mechanism for foreigners in the Bahamas once again. On the other side of it, my concern is that in effect, we say in nature and in effect in the law, how something will play out. This is how it's written. This is how it plays out. In effect, I feel like Bahamians will once again be disadvantaged in a legislative regime that purports to provide access for Bahamians, but I imagine that initially we'll be at a disadvantage where people who could come off a boat or a plane with a card that says, hey, this is my medical card, can gain access to cannabis products with greater ease than a Bahamian can in their own country.
Much greater ease, because the problem that we're going to have is this. They're coming off with a prescription or a medical card authorized by a physician outside the country. So we've already taken the physicians out of the equation. Okay? I have now, as a pharmacist, no real means to connect if there's a query on this. All right? But with the local person, they got to come with a prescription from a physician. Okay, so you've made a gateway for foreigners much easier than the Bahamians. And I hear people talk about the fact, well, if we have all these visitors and we need access, there are 121 public pharmacy outlets in this country.
121.
121 public pharmacy outlets. Places where you can eat, where they're either a government pharmacy or a clinic that provides pharmacy or a program that provides. And I'm including all the programs, prison, everything else, okay? There's 78 private pharmacies in the country. Now, my math tells me that's 199. So it's 199 places that if the government wants to empower them, can apply for this license with pharmacists or with healthcare providers that the government
Authorizes. Yeah.
physicians, nurses, right? That people can get cannabis medically from. There is no need for additional cannabis shops. No need. Absolutely zero need. All right? Because if it's a medicine and it's that important to me, I've gone on this 7-day cruise. I stop here in Nassau. I need this medicine. I can find the pharmacy and get my medicine. The same way we get it all the time. When they forget their insulin or dropping it break or they can't find it, they come off the ship, they find themselves to a pharmacy or the PMH and they get their insulins. So there's no need to set up additional access points. Why?
Well, let's talk about costs, unless, of course, you want to jump in before that. This legislative regime has been touted as also being more accessible because the government attempts to provide more affordable medicines. Is that what we're going to see? I don't get the impression that we're going to see less expensive medicines. I've heard no conversation about price control on this new sector, and it's touting to be more accessible because it's more affordable, but is there anything in place to ensure that people won't be gouged?
Let me ask you a question. If you have a product that's an agricultural commodity, okay, or a mineable commodity, who sets the price?
Government, eh?
No,
No, the market?
the market. Oil, OPEC sets the price. All right? That's why you have standards and futures. They talk about the price of grain, the price of this.
Yeah, but the whole point of this exercise was to provide more affordable medications
Listen
for
to me.
poor
The
Bahamians.
government will never be able to you can't price control something that's a limited resource. The market will always set that price.
I want to ask about the pharmacy and paraphernalia. Marijuana paraphernalia to use, like a bong pipe, because I want to get my medication.
But then the
made.
pharmacy is not a bong. It's a medication delivery device. Now, when the weed shop is a bong.
Yeah, but it's in the pharmacy.
See, let's be clear about that. All right. So
I can
just like on the street when they want to shoot up heroin, is a needle, but in the hospital,
it's a syringe.
it's a syringe.
So what do they mean by cannabis accessories?
I mean, you know,
The papers?
I guess. I mean, we're talking about papers and materials and delivery devices and those sort of things. Remember, I'm not a smoker, so I don't.
Right. See, I have a particular concern. I look at that, right? You say, okay, papers, Rizzlers, right, are used to make cigarettes, cannabis cigarettes, tobacco cigarettes, other leaf blend, loose leaf tobacco cigarettes. The legislation indicates that you have to have authorization to be able to import or sell cannabis accessories.
Right.
But how is a customs officer going to tell me that they know that I'm buying these papers to smoke cannabis in versus to smoke loose leaf tobacco in, which I'm legally allowed to do?
Exactly. These are, and again, this is why you need to bring the stakeholders to the table. Okay? Because these are the things that should be delineated before an act goes. Okay? And it may seem small, but here's the problem. If you walk through the act, you could pick up 30 of those things. And one of them by itself, oh, that's a little thing, we'll try to work it out on the fly. But 30 of them, then it becomes a problem. And customs goes, wait, I can't be running down 30 different variations of this thing. And everything get through, or nothing get through. Okay? These are the things why, listen, we know the government wants to get this thing through. The association is prepared to sit and work and help. Okay? We are prepared to. All right? We know that some of the things that we think need to be in there. We at least need to have a discussion about these things. And here's what happens when you have a discussion. The government says, well, we think this is why. And then we say, okay, but in practice, let me show you how this actually works in the pharmacy. Mm-hmm. And then they realize that maybe the people they're talking to who've never owned the pharmacy, maybe some of the experts who've never actually owned the pharmacy, who've never had to actually import stuff in, who've never had to deal with customs, who've never had to manage patients on the fly in a clinical setting. All right? Mm-hmm. That they say, boy, you know what? We missed that. And then there's no shame in that because the government is all of us. And we could sit down together and get it right.
Go ahead.
As a pharmaceutical association, when you look at this landscape, what civil society mechanisms or other types of mechanisms are absent right now that you think need to exist in this landscape for this regime to be as successful as we all want it to be?
I think from civil society, one of the things that has to come out is more and more education about this. Mm-hmm. And we've been proactive in this. Let me give an example. I'm going to call this because I know these are my friends. About 6 years ago, when we first got, maybe 7 years ago, when the first push for this was happening mm-hmm. under the Christie administration, mm-hmm. we sat down and we wrote a paper. All right, I was the primary author of it, but I had other people contribute toward it, called Cannabis and the Clergy. Okay? We wrote that paper. The first place I presented that paper to was the Bahamas Methodist Conference. I'm not a Methodist. Mm-hmm. I was finishing some research on the paper in Starbucks, and the Methodist minister came up and asked me what it was, and we started talking. He said, man, you finished that and I did. And when I left that meeting, their pastor said, we have a fresh perspective on this now. They invited me to come back and talk again when we updated it. Mm-hmm. I presented that paper to a number of different religious organizations and to the Christian Council.
So pause right there. Was cannabis outlawed? Was there a prohibition placed on cannabis because it's bad for the human body? Or was the prohibition placed on cannabis for other reasons? Because this whole conversation of should we or shouldn't we legalize cannabis is rooted in this health aspect. But if the prohibition that was applied wasn't applied because of health aspects, then what are we talking about?
I think that's a layered question. Are there some health concerns with the use of cannabis? No. Are there health concerns with the misuse of cannabis? Yes, mm-hmm. Just like every other medicine.
Mm-hmm. All right.
We have a caller here also, and I want to just read this too, right? Caller,
I can stick you next time you don't let me stick in.
So the cannabis bill would also establish a framework to capitalize on the economic potential of cannabis production, the establishing of a licensing system for cultivation, manufacture, transport, research, that's what got me excited, retail distribution, and analytic testing, along with regulatory framework for quality assurance. And just reading that.
I agree.
Do we have researchers at the Bahamas?
I think we can. I think we easily could. And I think, listen, we're ripe for this, okay? We've done our homework on this, man. We know that anywhere pine and coniferous plants grow, cannabis easily grows. So that's basically almost all our islands.
Okay. Let's go to the caller station here then. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello? Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
Everyone.
Morning.
Y'all heard of Holland?
Yeah.
Yes.
Amsterdam?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, recreational weed, yeah.
Just recreational. They also have, so there's a perfect example of this and how it started. That you just go back into their history and why it was introduced there. And probably the government has that in mind as well. That's a big business in Europe. It's one of the few places you can actually go and buy every strain and every brand of ganja on God's green earth. And there are brands of ganja there that are available to the general public that you can't find nowhere else. probably that's part of what they are considering. Now, I understand the pharmacist and him trying to get them to use common sense and bringing this all together, but these people who pushing this through, there's some outside influence involved in this. And all persons have simply is to look at the situation in Holland when this was introduced and to see where it is now. You could see the potentials, but the average Bahamian, it's going to be a while before he even approach catching up to this thing. Once it goes through, they say the chickens are in the coop or the bull is out of the barn, and he ain't no catching it right now.
But I don't think the bull's out of the barn, caller. The bills have been read once in Parliament. This is easily fixable. And I agree with you that Holland is a good example on both ends, though. Okay? If the government wanted to do a recreational regime for cannabis and say we want recreational and medical, right? Then have your cannabis dispensaries where you could walk in and say, I want this, bring them, whatever, so and so. We don't really care. Okay? At the end of the day, and I have to stress this, what we're concerned about is medical use because these are our patients, okay? And just the same way I tell all of my patients that if you go on to see Dr. King or anybody else, and I use Dr. King because I know Kevin, right? Mm-hmm. I say, if you go on to see Kevin and he's of you on some natural stuff, that's fine. Let me know as your pharmacist so I can help to make sure that we're not double dosing you with something.
I mean, when I'm selling local leaf teas,
right,
sometimes known as bush medicine, I tell all my customers, if you're on medication, talk to your doctor before you use any of these products as a therapy or medicinal product.
Yeah, all we want to do is safeguard patients.
Lines are lit up, but we need to take a short break. So as soon as we come back from this break, callers, we're going to get these 5 callers through right now, okay? This has been Guardian Radio AMCA Nuri. We're talking to Dr. Marvin Smith, who is the president of the Bahamas Pharmaceutical Association. And we're talking about medical. It's going to be miracle.
It could be a miracle.
Medical marijuana. And the pharmacist said, man, if it's medicine, it should be dispensed by pharmacists. And if no pharmacist is in there, it shouldn't be dispensed because it's medicine. We'll be right back.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
The Grand Bahama News is available every Tuesday in the Nassau Guardian. You can buy your local paper at Freeport Convenience Stores, Western Bakery, DeGregory's Fine Foods, and Bellevue Gifts. Now is the time to reach your Grand Bahama market with affordable packages, including print and digital. Call GB News Sales Representative Kavandre at 822-6717 or message him on WhatsApp for ad rates. Classified ads are now available every Tuesday as well. Keep up with everything Grand Bahamian every Tuesday in the Nassau Guardian.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
And welcome back to Guardian Radio AM. We're going straight to the phone line. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear us?
Yeah, good morning, Ms. Green. Good morning, Mr. Nuri.
Morning.
And good morning to Mr. Smith.
Morning.
Yeah, General, I was agreeing with everything what you're saying, right? There's only one problem I have, but firstly, I'm not hearing, it is so complex, and they trying to make it look simple, so I lean on your side, all right? Now, the thing is, I have so much experience in this thing here. The hydro versus the bio, the hydroponics, right?
Correct.
And I listen to you, and then before, when I hang up, I'd like for you to explain to the public the complexities in calculating the micrograms according to a specific rate of cannabis, given the fact that different species have different amount of THC. So I would like to now determine that, because you have to understand what I'm saying is, if you have an auto-flowering plant, there are disadvantages and advantages to growing the auto-flowering versus the feminized seeds growing it. You could grow it hydroponically too, but versus growing it biologically, which is naturally 12 hours sunlight, it rests in the night, et cetera, versus stressing the plant with 24-hour light, 18-hour light, and 12-hour light, respectively, right?
Yeah.
You get different chemicals produced as a result of these abnormal light exposures, right? So then I look at the bio, growing herb naturally. So then the THC would be normal as God made it according to the geographical area you live in. But when you grow it hydroponically inducing chemicals, etc., and then let's say you harvesting it.
Yeah.
Is there a time to detoxify the plant, as they do in Canada and first world countries? You let's say you give the plant only water for 3 weeks to decrease it. Is there any way that they determine the contaminants and the amount of chemicals? Because people could be inducing anything using liquid electronics. They could be inducing anything into the plant. So I do agree with you that it needs to be regulated. We can't have people self-regulating themselves. It doesn't pan out that way. All right. So as it relates to the strains, then the same thing which you're talking about now, that normally back in the days we would say cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, and the hybrid. So, but now there's about 700 strains.
Exactly.
So can they use AI to determine? Because there is a side effect. It can cause palpitations of the heart. So you guys are up against a rock and a hard place. Is there any armamentarium or infrastructure in place to actually test the amount of THC? Because it is too high for a smoker. I used to smoke. I wouldn't say how long, okay? But why would you want to have cannabis at 30% THC or 27 or what? You understand what I'm saying? How would you know how would you deal with this? I like to listen.
Thank you, 52. And do you recommend that anybody who's cultivating for medicinal purposes has to grow in a contained space, a greenhouse?
I don't know that you have to do a greenhouse, but I think 52 is correct in terms of the fact that different things are going to produce different impacts. And this is why one of the recommendations we made to the government from last year was to contact quality assurance and quality analysis companies that do this on a state level. We actually gave them the name of a PhD who does this for 2 states in the U.S. He's actually married to a Bahamian, okay? And he was the scientist who came and presented to us. And we said to them, at least talk to this guy or somebody with similar qualifications to set up that sort of analysis, because all cannabis is not created equal.
Yep.
Okay? And these are the key things we have to look at. And here's the issue you have too. When you take these cannabis shops, weed shops, that's what I can call them, okay? That don't have any oversight under the Pharmacy Council. You call them pharmacies, but they don't have no oversight over the Pharmacy Council. The people who work there are overseen by the Health Professions Council, right, which does nothing with quality assurance and analysis, none of that things, right? Okay? Who is actually going to be overseeing on a day-to-day basis, not just what they're importing or what's being brought in and grown, but from time to time testing to make sure that...
So should all cultivation sites be cameraed up, right? And so they have to provide access or at least record so that if an issue occurs, you can go back and watch exactly what happened.
It has to be logs. There has to be... one of the things they talked about is that they will have inspections who can inspect by video. How do you inspect by video? You have to go there and do the inspection.
Let's go to the callers again. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Good morning, yes. I just want to add to the history of this marijuana. The marijuana was demonized back during Prohibition, along with the alcohol, because the people at that time said it was a mind-altering drug, like the alcohol. The Indians used that for years to worship their gods and the sand, the sea, the land, and the rain, or to be thankful for when it rained. They never had all these problems which we're talking about now, or this never came up. But because it was demonized, it gave it a bad look, or it gave people a bad impression back then during Prohibition. Now the people going right back to alcohol and they're drinking more than they ever did and doing more damage. The marijuana, I don't see it causing all this problem. I tried to figure out where because when we were growing up, we smoked marijuana, or I smoked it, and I wasn't particular what it was, what the grade of it was and all of that. And everybody just went on their merry way. And we still here. A lot of us are still here. So all these problems that are coming up or whatever might come up, I try to understand it, because I still here.
Well, Cole, you have to remember too that, again, because of the various hybrid strains that are coming out, things that weren't even around before, and then you have synthetic THC that they're producing, that's sometimes 10 to 30 times more potent. So we have to make sure that we know what the quality is. But the biggest issue here, if you allow me, the biggest issue here is this: we want to make sure that when your mother, or when you come in as a patient, all right, and you have a prescription and a documented use for cannabis, we support that. We want to make sure that we're incorporating that into all of your therapy, because the overall aspect for us should always be for the best health outcomes. All right, that's key for us. That person they're gonna put in those cannabis dispensaries with no real training can't do that.
Absolutely. Nuri, the analogy, I want to use an analogy to respond to the caller. You know, hot pepper, use a hot pepper guy. The hottest pepper in the world is a hybrid, right? It was hybridized. It was created by a farmer, right? We could try to go as hot as we want, but who could eat that? Who could take a bite of that pepper and put it in their mouth? And for what reason? The pepper levels are hitting bear mace levels, right? Like you don't use this to eat. You use this as a weapon. This is for weapon.
But stupid people still go and eat it.
Right, and the same thing with cannabis, right, Uncle? You smoking the goat pepper and the habanero pepper. Now these boy them want you to smoke the Carolina Reaper. You just can't tell them, no, sir. I can stick to what I used to.
Let's go to the calls again. Go ahead, producer. Patch the call through. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Oh, this can make it quick.
Is that me?
Yeah, about 20 seconds. I just realized what time it is.
Is that me?
Yeah,
Yes, sir, it's you, baby.
20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Godly day to start, always along with you and your guests, Aaron and Nuri. Well, Dr. Smith, right?
Yes.
What's that again?
Smith, you're right.
Remember 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Smith. Bremen, Darling, Ferguson here. Let me ask you something. Now, a person with just a bachelor degree got you all going through all kind of problems, right? You got a master, and you got a doctor degree, right? Let me ask you something. All this bush we have in the Bahamas, right? The family islands. Why is it that y'all don't establish something whereby y'all do some studies on the bush here in the Bahamas and make sure it's good enough to give the medication for the Bahamian public instead of copying? When I was going to school,
All right. Is the Bahamas Pharmaceutical Association involved in or aware of any local studies documenting the potency, efficacy, and elements of local bush medicines?
No, we have not.
Smith, making that last plea, what you want the government to do?
I'm asking for the Prime Minister. Put the brakes on this bill. Bring the medical and pharmacy associations to the table. Let's get this right. We support getting this done. We just want to make sure it's done with safety and productivity for all.
Good. This has been Guardian Radio AM with C.A. Nuri. Thank you very much, Aaron Green. Again, that's Dr. Marvin Smith, who's the head of the Bahamas Pharmacy Association. Yes. Have a wonderful day.